Well, Buckeye fans, we still have a lot more questions than we have answers as Ohio State gets halfway through this week following one of the most disappointing losses in recent history. They have to pick up the pieces because they are certainly not out of it. Tonight, we answer the question of where do the Buckeyes go from here? Excited to bring it to you on this episode of the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast. Anthony Moeglin alongside my partner and former Buckeye himself, Kevin Woidke, and he's what everyone has been waiting for. All of our fans, Kevin, have been waiting to hear from you because this weekend did not go our way. It was really disappointing from a lot of areas, and as the dust has settled over the past couple of days, I think that there's a number of talking points that I think are pretty valid on how the game was approached, how the team approached the football game, how the team executed in the football game, and most importantly, where do they go from here? Because while Saturday sucked and it was awful, there's still some season left to go, and Ohio State's not going to be out of it. So they got to pick themselves off the mat and get it going. But before we get into answering that question, Kevin, what were just some of your takeaways from whatever that was on Saturday?
No, I mean, it obviously wasn't what we wanted it to be. It wasn't what we expected. I mean, we saw the writing on the wall with not having much movement in the run game on the offensive line, and it was made very clear. This team is built to beat Ohio State, and that's just what they did. They are – they played a perfect game. If you're an underdog that's trying to upset somebody, you take the air out of the ball. You don't let anybody get going. You make big plays. Like you limit big plays. That's what I mean. Like they didn't give us an opportunity to have someone break it big. They didn't give us the opportunity to have a big, Jack Sawyer's interception was big, but that was about it. And that was, I don't even know what that guy was so wide open. I don't know how somehow he missed through that. But we do that and then we 3 and out immediately. Like what? It just didn't seem like it seemed like we were playing timid, and that's the only way to describe it.
Yeah, the big thing and I think you make a really good point, is that Michigan never allowed stuff to build, right? If Ohio State would make one play, they would shut the water off quickly. And being in the stadium, and when I got to be in the crowd almost, instead of being in the press box, I was walking around just trying to get a feel of the environment, because one, it was my first ever game that, Ohio State Michigan game that I got to attend. So I wanted to get a feel for it. And they kept preventing the whole crowd from getting into it outside of that one big drive there. And as Kevin and I get going here, there's a bunch of people jumping in. So feel free to pop into the comments and drop us a note. We'll bring it up and we'll add to the discussion. But Kevin, I wanted to kind of prompt you in a question that I found very interesting as the discourse has continued post this game, and really the kind of the discussion around Ryan Day trying to win a football game that really wasn't the personality of this Ohio State team. There's more and more stats that are coming out that Ohio State was trying to just jam that thing up in between the tackles and prove to themselves, prove to Michigan, prove to all of college football that they're a tough football team and they can compete in that sense. And in my opinion, they got a little too, is Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, they got a little too in their head of trying to prove to somebody that they're tough, instead of just, hey, our team can run up and down on this Michigan group, and we need to do that in order to win this game.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot. It all falls on Ryan Day's head. I think that's a little unfair. I don't know who's better out there. I love all the people calling for his head. Show me 3 coaches out there that are a better coach than him. I mean, he beat Cignetti. Only one you could say is Kirby Smart down in Georgia. I mean, who else? People are asking for Vrabel to come down. I mean, he doesn't want it. He left college football for a reason, and he says doesn't want to deal with the recruiting, which I don't blame him. That isn't his personality. I mean, at least that's what he's showing in the media. It doesn't seem like his personality to want to go into some kid's house in rural Alabama to recruit him to come to Ohio State. Like, that's not who he is. I think that it was almost the game they were trying to beat them too much. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but like they should have just stuck with their bread and butter. They were a much better run defense than pass defense. We weren't throwing the ball, and I didn't know what we were doing. I don't know if that has something to do with Will, because we were throwing the ball a good amount, then Will goes down, and then we turn into a running team. If that was the case, why not pull him and put somebody else in? But I don't know.
Yeah, it was that part was really disappointing to me, because even you and I talked about it during our week leading up to the game of like, hey, Michigan's strength, or one of Michigan's strengths, is their defensive line. They got two legit first round talents in the middle of their defensive line, and Ohio State kept trying to run the football down their throat, and it really wasn't working. And as the game kind of gets put to bed, I don't think it ever will, because, frankly, I don't think it's hyperbole to say it's one of the worst losses like Ohio State's had in a very long time, just for all of the circumstances of being 20-point favorites, being a much better football team, being one of the worst Michigan teams in a very, very long time, and also, too, being the number 2 team in the country with aspirations of going the distance. And now the challenge is, how do they respond to this, right? You get a little extended time, so you probably get to lick your wounds a little bit more than you normally would, but they're going to have a huge game, and potentially the way things are starting to shake out, it looks like it's still going to be in Columbus. Like, you don't even drop out of the top 8, so you may have that first-round home playoff game, man, and that's going to be a game that Ohio State has to get up for, regardless of how they feel about this loss. They can't let it linger, because they got some big goals that they can still achieve in this season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to look up the CFP rankings real quick, so I don't have them on hand. I mean, my thing is, like, you look at it, you're going to – Oregon and Penn State, they're going to play each other. You're not going to penalize Penn State for playing extra games. So no matter who loses that game, they're probably going to be 5. I see Georgia, Texas. I see whoever loses that game being 6. And then – obviously, Notre Dame fills up into that first-round bye. So you keep bumping it down. Like, Notre Dame's probably going to be 7 or maybe 8. I mean, depending on what happens, that we're lucky to be 8. And that's where, who knows what the reality situation is going to be. But, I mean, I, for one, am just – they need to reestablish them. They need to reevaluate themselves. They need to realize, hey, where Chip Kelly needs to take a step back and be like, hey, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. We need to figure out what is the right course of action here. And he probably is the smartest guy in the room, but like, if for some reason he wasn't on Saturday, and he was trying to do one thing. And I don't know what happened on the field. I know that from playing there, sometimes there's changes that you do in the locker room based on what's going on. Like, hey, like, JT can't run, we're going to throw the ball out more. And then we're like, wait, why isn't JT running? It's because we're tight-lipped about our injuries. Who knows if on that hit something happened to Will's shoulder or not. But the reality situation is that showed, if that's the case, it showed me how little faith they have in our backup quarterbacks. Yeah. And that's just what it is. Like, we need these guys that are younger to mature quickly, because if we don't have a quarterback that can go in like a Dwayne Haskins did in Ann Arbor, like JT Barrett and Cardell did in 2014, like, that's a big, big, big problem. And we got to figure out what we're doing in that sense to evaluate and elevate our current talent. I think that shows when we made the change. I think us making the change at quarterback coach last year was one of the reasons, was the lack of elevation from the guys.
I don't disagree. And truth be told, I was, when Will went out with his injury, right, Ohio State's offense was kind of moving it a little bit, but I was like, all right, Devin's going to come in, and they've shown that they're not scared. You think back to that Michigan State game early in the year, they're not scared to throw it with Devin Brown, with any of their backups. So obviously Devin only plays one play, but like you said, it was very, very clear that Will wasn't seeing the field well, and he wasn't comfortable at all And at what point do you pull the trigger? That's a hard question, but that's why the coaches get paid the big bucks, and I think that they slipped up in a massive way last Saturday, and it sucks. But Kev, I mean, if they are able to land a home playoff game, or even have to go on the road, I mean, is this season still salvageable in your opinion? Like, are you, as a former player and now as a fan of this group, is this one where it's like, man, I just get out of here, get this season over with, or you're like, hey, let's go try to win this national title, and if we're able to do it, screw the Michigan game. Like, where do you land on that conversation?
No, I mean, obviously the goal is to win that game. It'll definitely soften the blow if we win the whole thing. Like, I had some buddies that are fans of different organizations that are also Buckeyes fans, their organizations being not the Browns. And they're looking at it like, who cares? We're still in the playoff. And I'm like, yeah, but it's different. But I guess that's, as the dust kind of settled, I'm like, yeah, you're right. We got to show out in the first game of the playoff. I don't care who we're playing. If we're 8, we're playing 9. And if 8 plays 9 and we play Indiana at Ohio State again, that'll be a wild game, especially with how we ended that game, with all the talk and all that. Would love to see an SEC team come up to play in the or anywhere in the South come up to play. Give me Miami, anybody. I'm surprised South Carolina's outside the playoff, honestly, but that's just me. They had a great season. They had some pretty big wins, and they're 9-3, and so is Alabama, but Alabama's ahead of them. I don't get that. I think it's the lore of Alabama and the draw of that, but I think the one thing that drew people to the playoff is the variety. I just think that, if we can win the whole thing, great. If we lose in the national championship again, it's okay, but if we're anything short of that, it's going to be one of the biggest failures in my opinion, because I was looking to see at the beginning of the year with their talent, this is a national championship team, and it won't. I mean, even if we win this game and we go on to the Big Ten championship, if we lose we lose in the first round, it's still considered not the greatest. It's back-to-back losses to end it. People aren't going to care that he won one game against Tino North. That's just not. That's the reality of the situation. People are calling for, their fans are calling for Day to have a lifetime contract. Our fans are calling for Day's head. It's a reality that the table's completely flipped from when I was a sophomore, junior, senior at Ohio State. We were like, this guy can't beat us. Let's go. And then it's something, there was a lot that changed. I think the biggest thing that changed in the course of this rivalry, throw out all the cheating stuff, was them not playing the game during COVID, because it got them to wash the taste out of their mouth for a year and get to regroup and then come and attack us.
It's an interesting point, one I haven't heard, and certainly valid for sure. And I think the biggest conversation kind of coming out of this is that Ryan Day conversation. And there's certainly two polarizing ways about it, right? We've kind of touched on it. People have talked about Braves. Braves isn't coming down to coach college football. And then you look at the whole board. It's like, all right, there's a couple names out there that would be potentials, right? It'd be Marcus Freeman in Notre Dame. It'd be Lane Kiffin. It'd be Matt Campbell. But outside of those names, there's not many others where you're like, oh, home run hire. And it's like, who are you get that's better than Ryan Day?
Even those guys aren't that good. Marcus Freeman can't beat us. Lane Kiffin's a walking disaster. I stand by that statement. He was a nothing in Oklahoma. He took Stoops' team over, and then he followed his golden ticket to he took his golden ticket to USC and still couldn't do anything with it. They probably would have made the 12-team playoff last year. Great, okay. But Lane Kiffin hasn't done anything for me. Marcus Freeman, Buckeye alum, maybe it would bring a little bit of spark, but Notre Dame fans been calling for his head for 2 years. No one's very happy with. I mean, Marcus Freeman lost to NIU this year.
Yeah.
What are we talking about here? He's the best coach in college football that is available because he's on our team. That's who he is. I mean, I was disappointed to see angles of him from the fight. To say the least. I love to see that fight. I did. It showed, because I remember how we felt after the Oklahoma game when Baker did it, and how if we knew that was going on, if they did that when we were out there, we would have absolutely done something about it. I mean, it would have been bad. Some of my teammates, it would have been wild. But I mean, it was good to see some fight. But where was that? Like in the coaching staff, like the players seemed to have the fight all game. The players were playing fast. They were playing hard. It just seemed like on defense they were out there the whole time, and on offense they weren't. They weren't putting us in a position to succeed as a coaching staff, which is what's tough. I think there's some very, very hard questions. Take Ryan Day out of it. There's some very, very hard questions you're asking some of the position coaches for sure.
Totally.
I think that there's some very tough questions you got to ask. Is this guy the right guy for the job? I'm not calling for anybody's head. I'm not saying what positions I think those are because I have different opinions than other people. But there's a couple people that are going to really be sweating when evaluations come up this year. At least they should be. It's
going to be a really interesting offseason, whenever that starts, whether that be in 4 weeks, whether that be on January 21st, when after Ohio State hoists the trophy. We will certainly find out. And things are going to heat up. Obviously, you got conference championship week. This week, we're not leaving you hanging. Obviously, our show schedules are a little bit different this week, just balancing some holiday things and some work things. But we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to be taking a deep look at the national – college football doesn't stop at all. We're going to take a look at the National Signing Day and who of the future Buckeyes stand out and where the Ohio State's next class kind of ranks among some of the elites in all of college football and certainly in the Big Ten. So we're going to take a peek at that. And then Saturday, we'll be back with you in the morning talking about maybe a rooting guide for the conference championship games, because while we're obviously all going to have our eyes on the Big Ten championship, there's a lot of things that could happen in the ACC, in the Big 12, in the SEC that are going to shake some things up. Clemson has a really big chance to put a huge wrench in the entire college football playoff. So we'll have content for you all week long. So hit that subscribe button and be alerted anytime that we go live and bring you anything. And then also head over to our written site, si.com/college/Ohio State, as the guys on the site are working hard to keep it filled with fresh content, especially covering signing day, as well as all the Buckeye sports, including basketball, both men's and women's, wrestling, and everything in between. So, Kev, before we get out of here, any final thoughts? I know that we didn't get to chat after the game. We got a couple days to kind of chill out. Any final thoughts as we put the final touches on that Michigan game?
No, I mean, I touched on it. As a former player, you're upset about it. As a fan, you're upset about it. It's just it seems like it's turning into what I knew was the norm, and I'm hoping that gets stuffed out before that becomes the case.
Yeah, you don't want it to continue, and unfortunately for Ohio State, they're not going to have another chance for another 365 days. What that Buckeye team will look like next year, heading up to the Big House, we don't know, but we'll certainly start getting some answers here in the next couple of weeks. So, like I said, hit that subscribe button, jump over to our other site, check out all of our content. But as always, we appreciate you hanging out with us tonight as we take a look and put the Michigan game finally to rest. For my partner, Kevin Woidke, I'm Anthony Moeglin. Appreciate you jumping in and hanging out with us on the Ohio State Buckeyes on SI YouTube channel.